Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Get More Students podcast. I'm your co-host, Alex Asher, CEO of LearnCube.
And I'm Herbert Gerzer, founder of herbertgerzer.com.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the switch from B2C to selling B2B in languages. And this is going to be best put through a story, through one of the founders of Fluentify. We have Giacomo Moise, who's joining us. He's the CEO. And it's a great story. And it's actually a conversation that I think a lot of listeners here may be having is, should I stick with B2C? Should I maybe think about adding a segment to my business? What would that look like? And, has somebody else done this before? And I think, first of all, the answer is yes. And the second answer is we've got that person on the podcast with us today.
Fantastic.
Hello.
So Giacomo, tell us a little bit about yourself and getting started, when you started, how the Fluentify story even began.
Sure. So Fluentify started in 2013 in London. I had the great opportunity to travel, study, and work abroad for many years, since high school, actually. And I realized, working with my co-founders, that the language space is a very crowded one. But when you look for, at least back in the days in 2013, when we were looking for a tool in order to practice the language you wanted to improve, with a specific focus on real life experience, not just the grammar books and the rules. It's just the language you need to live the real life out there. We struggled. We couldn't find the platform. We couldn't find the solution we hoped for. And so that's how Fluentify started. It was funded by myself and two other Italian entrepreneurs, Claudio and Matteo. And since then, many things changed. The goal at the beginning was to create the marketplace for language learners. So pure B2C platform that was aiming to grow and scale in terms of volumes. Back then, the marketplace was eBay. So we sometimes we refer to our business model to the eBay for language learning. And then things didn't work out as expected, but that's part of the business life. And here we are, a B2B player now, focusing on, we say, Southern European countries, selling language learning to corporate clients, focusing on live learning experience. So that's exactly what we do. That's why we wake up every day. That's what we fight for.
Maybe let's go back to that early experience. What did that feel like when you were starting out? And again, you started out in B2C. Maybe if you can kind of go back to that experience, I think some of our listeners may kind of resonate with some of the challenges that you're having and the thoughts you might have had at that time.
Look, when we started, we really wanted to be a B2C player. Mm-hmm. And the goal was to provide a super high quality experience to as many learners as possible. Mm-hmm. And the two things many times, not always, but many times don't match. Because if you focus on quality and if you focus on volume, when there's a component of humans involved, that's very challenging. Mm. So we very soon realized that we had to somehow look for reducing the quality of our service and the teachers and the vetting process, because every teacher on Fluentify was not able to join freely. For example, if you look at other platforms like italki that I respect and I like, there's not a super clear path in order to become a teacher. Everybody can be a teacher on italki, then you can be verified, and there are many other tools in order to reach that level of quality. But if you really want to focus on the kind of quality we're able to provide, well, that doesn't really work when it comes to B2C volumes.
Yeah.
And the business model as well was a pure marketplace model. So we charged a tiny fee on every single transaction. And again, if you're able to raise large fundings from venture capitals, at that point, maybe you can succeed. We have great companies out there that did manage to make that model work. Think about Preply, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're massive now. So that's something that we respect so much. But in the end, we really decided, and going back to your question, Alex, that wasn't really a decision we made. It was kind of a philosophy, the way we decided to run our business. We really wanted to keep quality under control.
Mm-hmm.
Really wanted to being able always to say, yes, on Fluentify, you'll find the best teachers out there at a right price with a strong background, not just because they're teachers, but because they are business people, they are entrepreneurs, they might study medicals, they do have a background that is not just the kind of teacher's background that you could find in a language school. And then, as I said, it wasn't immediate to understand that model wasn't sustainable. At the same time, something beautiful happened, as it always happens in business, is that when looking at our students, when looking at the people that were spending more money than others on Fluentify, we realized that there was a common path there. There were young professionals, there were people that used the language they were using Fluentify as a business tool rather than a language solution. They wanted to practice for an important meeting. They wanted to prepare a presentation. They wanted to work on their emails because they struggle with writing in English. So it was clear to us that Fluentify was not really the marketplace we envisioned back then for travelers and let's say B2C students. It was becoming a business tool. And so we started talking to companies. We started answering requests from entrepreneurs saying, look, I love Fluentify. I would like to buy Fluentify for my coworkers. And you know, guys, that in the startup world, investors always tend to say, be focused, stay focused, don't get distracted. If you do B2C, just do B2C. Don't worry about everything else. The world is full of opportunities, but you just need to focus on one thing. And so at the beginning, every time we received a request from a B2B client, from a company, we always said, no, thanks. That's not our model. We don't do B2B. And then at the moment we started saying, don't know, let's listen, let's see. We realized that there was a large opportunity out there that today became Fluentify as a whole.
Wonderful. I mean, it seems as though it was quite an organic transition.
100%.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about how you adapted in terms of actually selling the courses, because B2C, it's much simpler, so to say. People can book or pay online, and they have their teachers, their courses. But going into B2B, it's more of a manual process. You have a lot of contact with different people in the organization. How did you manage to create a process that led to that?
Yeah, and look, you spotted 100%. So that's exactly the point, because when I get asked when was Fluentify born, the immediate answer is 2013. Reality is that Fluentify reborn in 2017 because we had to change organically, as you said, but we pretty much had to change everything. We had to change the platform because, of course, the student profile remain pretty much the same. Of course, we always improve it and there are new releases, but the core is there. At the same time, when you do B2C, you work with, in our case, you work with teachers and you work with students. When you do B2B, on top of that, there would be the company, there would be the HR manager, there would be the training manager. So we now have 3 different profiles, we say. And then the way you sell it is completely different. So there's no way, at least, as I said before, we target Southern European countries. So there's no way a training manager will buy your solution with a credit card online. Forget about it. That won't happen ever. So we had to set up a sales team based in strategic cities. People pre-COVID pretended and expected you to meet in person, to pitch the solution, to very simply have a coffee, and chat. Still happening now, a little bit more on Zoom coffees, but you feel that at some point that in-person meeting might allow you to grow the revenue with that specific client, or just consolidate the relationship. And this is something that when doing B2C, it sounds crazy. I mean, you should spend the least amount of time possible with a single student, because yes, you should surprise them. The wow effect must be there. But if that wow effect is through technology, it's better. With B2B, it's exactly the opposite. You should always try to get your phone and call and have a chat and meet in person. So yeah, we really had to. In the startup world, you tend to say pivot. I believe that this is exactly what happened. So in a very organic way, it took pretty much a year. We pivoted from B2C to B2B. And the beauty, if you want, is that we still have our B2C clients working and studying and practicing on Fluentify, but we do nothing in order to grow that user base. We have been doing nothing since 2017 now. So it's just because of the word of mouth, because of our great teachers, because of the way the platform works, that we continue serving hundreds of teachers, hundreds of students every week. But reality is that everybody at Fluentify is focused on B2B clients. The full team is focusing there.
I think you've done a really great job of explaining kind of that differences and also that transition. I'm particularly curious, maybe just to pull out some of the things you've said on when do you know that actually B2B might be the channel that you want to explore? And I think you've kind of mentioned it in that you had stories or clients and opportunities where a client was like, hey, I want this from other colleagues. So that was an example. Do you need to, in your view, should you be looking out for what's already in your database to kind of look at that opportunity? Or is it one of those things that you possibly could have worked out before you even started and then kind of really gone on that approach? So I'm just kind of curious.
I think if we started with a more consulting approach, let's say, if we studied the market a little bit better, and if we outlined in a clearer way that quality for us was more important than volumes, at that point we should have saved a couple of years, I believe. Because, Alex, the thing is that both models work. And you have the living proof out there. I mentioned a couple of businesses, but again, if you just focus on Fluentify and Preply, you see that both models can be extremely successful. Fluentify is now a leading player in the B2B space. We're growing, expanding different other geographies. But out there are people that managed to make our model, B2C model, work. So it's both are possible. Today we realized that B2B was more relevant to our business model is then when we understood that with our product, we were solving a problem for real. And, every investor, every business mentor will tell you that you really need to be able to solve a problem. Reality is that with the solution we provide, and we started providing in 2016, 2017, when meeting with HR teams, you could and you can understand that what we provide is different, that a box is checked at that point. A training need is now covered when clients choose Fluentify. And so I think that is the number one question an entrepreneur should always try to answer. Is the solution I'm providing checking that box, checking that problem? And I'm not sure we were doing that as much as a B2C provider, because yes, people using Fluentify were super happy. We had long-time students, but the volume was small. So something is telling me that there were other solutions out there that were as much or even better.
Now that you're looking at the market in 2022, would you say it's easier for a smaller business to approach B2B or B2C, or do you think they're equally as hard or as easy?
I think they're equally as hard. and I'm not even referring to the space we work in, because if you look at the space now, it's crowded. It is crowded. I mean, you will find many small players doing great things, but they are still small. So at some point, I do expect there will be some sort of consolidation, because it's challenging, and in the end, the risk is to fight on prices, and that's not safe. That's not even fair for the people behind the service. I'm not referring to the entrepreneurs. I'm thinking to the teachers. I mean, we should not be incentivized in reducing the prices in order to gain more clients. But generally speaking, so if we do not focus on language learning, I believe that it's equally as hard, because learning is hard. Learning requires a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of commitment. So no matter what you do, if you sell to corporates or if you sell to consumers, in the end, you always work with a person. You work with a student, and learning isn't easy. So you really the goal is to solve that problem that we mentioned before. The difference is that it is who's paying for it. So either the company or the person. I believe that learning in the end is a B2C business, because the company doesn't learn anything. The employees do. So it's and this is something that helped us a lot when doing the switch, because starting B2C and then moving B2B, the platform, the mindset was always referring to the learner in the end. The user experience, the learning path we worked around in order to provide an effective, a flexible solution, always had the end user in mind, not the company. If we started B2B, maybe I'm sure we would focus more on the guy with a credit card rather than the guy studying on our platform. So that's something that either way is hard, but you should always have a feeling, a strong approach on B2C, I believe, even if you do B2B.
What would you say are the kind of fundamentals you need to have in order to be able to even provide a B2B service? What do you need to get right?
It's a good question, because B2B, especially when you start, it's easier because with one client, with one contract, you can make a little bit of money. So everybody, I believe, is able to sell his own baby, his own company. So what makes a successful B2B company is processes. So you must be able to, not to do everything with the same people, but you need to have verticals. So there must be the sales team, the customer success team, the product team, and at the beginning you can be a one-man show for sure, but in order to scale that it's hard. B2C is different because per se it scales easier. So with a small team you can serve hundreds, thousands of students at a time. So it's tricky, I believe, B2B, because it looks easier, especially at the beginning. I believe it is easier if you look at the top line, if you look at revenue. But then going from 100K to a million, and from 1 million to 5 million, from 5 million to 10 million, it's a different business every time. It's a different structure, different processes. And I'm not sure this is quite the same when doing B2C.
Right. Definitely a lot of reporting involved, a lot of admin in the back end. So it's not just making sure the student's happy, which of course should always be the goal, but you also need to keep the company happy and the human resources department happy with feedback reports, quality management. So a much more 360-degree approach to B2B.
And look, the thing that I think it's risky when doing B2B is to become a consulting firm. That I love consulting, but sometimes you start with a product vision, and that product gets destroyed by the many requests every company is coming up with. And the thing is that the product in the end isn't there. Every single client has different needs, and in the end you become a consulting firm. Something that Alex you did in a great way is to have a solid product that can be customized 100%, but the product is there, is always there, and there you create value because it's scalable, but it's flexible, and it's B2B, really B2B. By the way, you are also a recurring revenue, so it's even better than that. But so yeah, that's the risk that I see, and at some point, it's easy, because I said before, it's easy to start, but it's also easy to not to scale. So that's the issue.
What recommendations would you have for people when it comes to that sale? Because you're going to be pushed at one point to kind of change your processes to fit a particular organization. And in fact, that's a lot of the time what makes a small business get the first client is they are willing to do the thing that a larger customer won't, a larger player won't want to do, because they don't want to bend their processes. How do you sell that? How do you get around that? Because it's also like an advantage and a disadvantage, I guess.
Look, Alex, I think you're a better position to answer that question, because I learned you that's exactly what you do great. Something that we did is, so the secret sauce there is being able to say you need two things. You need great salespeople, and you need an in-house tech team, because a good salesperson will always say yes, but at some point is convincing you that the thing that you are asking is not exactly what you need, but the thing that you need is the one that us as industry expert have already worked on and can be sometimes customized, but the reality is that you probably don't need that. You don't even need that. Still, you need to be able to listen to the market, to the clients, and to the feedback. So whenever you understand that there's a feature that you're missing, or whenever you find an opportunity, you must be quick, and the internal tech team can allow that. So the two things must work very, very well together. We ended up having clients asking for crazy things, and the invoice was so important that at some point we had to say yes. But this is part of the B2B process. And again, this was possible because we had a scalable platform and internal developers. The risk is there, Alex, and we know that very well, especially at the beginning when you do rely on very few clients. It's hard to say no. It's hard. It's a risk. It's literally you put your business at risk when you say no, because on the long term that doesn't make sense. On the short term, I need to pay bills. So exactly. The balance it must be there.
What would you say is the difference between, or at least the kind of balance between marketing and sales with B2B? Is it more about effectively the salesperson is the marketer because they're the ones that do the door knocking, or is marketing a bigger thing than people realize? How do those two things go together?
To at Fluentify, and this is not true for everybody out there, when we discuss marketing, we think about two things. One is lead generation. So it can be either inbound or outbound. But this does pay off in the very short term. So it's kind of been you have a goal and you get the leads. That's it. On the longer term, it's branding, it's brand awareness, and that's really what makes a company strong, recognized, and positioned in the relevant market. In between, again, at Fluentify, there's very little. For example, we don't do paid ads because it's a massive word. It's a crowded one, as you said before, and many times the perception out there is that you already know a solution. You're not looking for a solution. Everybody has been bombarded by the Duolingo and the Babbel and the many solutions that everybody knows. So it's something that we don't do. We rather invest in brand awareness or leads, and those two things. One is the opposite of the other, I believe. Sales is different because again, at Fluentify, sales comes in when the contact has been qualified somehow. So there's a person or a company with a specific need, with a budget and with a timeline in mind, and that's where sales comes in. We do think that when you provide a solution that is around learning, talking sales isn't exactly what you really want to do. It isn't in the client's interest. At least in my mind, when you think about sales, it's the it's the US guy with super strong sales processes that will ask you twice every question and will call you at the end of the day, say, look, my manager allowed me to do X percent in discount if you sign tonight. So that to me, that's sales. And it's beautiful when you sell a software. It's beautiful when you sell something that doesn't have a human component, doesn't have a learning component at center. We rather define ourselves as learning consultants because that's what we do when we're meeting with a client. We start asking questions rather than pitching a solution, because in the end, every company is similar but different. We find companies saying, look, we want to provide language learning as a benefit because we believe language learning is important. It's an international company and we want our employees to interact freely among different departments and countries. That's beautiful. And then we have companies saying, look, we have a new CEO is from abroad and he must be able to speak our language. So there's no time in there. So let's do everything we can in order to reach that goal, no matter the cost, no matter the effort. So you see, there's not one solution. There's no pricing isn't always there. So it's really a consulting service that we provide, of course, knowing that we have a strong product behind, because the product in the end is the same. And that's not even true, because every session is different, being delivered by a human, by a teacher. So the product at Fluentify, we always say, is designed and delivered by our great teachers. So that's why we don't do sales in a way. We do, but we don't.
And I'm kind of curious as well, what would make a good, so I'm just thinking if somebody's like, hey, I'm thinking that B2B is something I'd actually be really good at, what would be the ingredients they would need to have to be good at selling that service? So we've kind of obviously talked about platform, we've talked about marketing and sales, and you talked about branding is something that builds over time, but it's not necessarily the paid ads necessarily isn't going to kind of solve the problem, which means that you might need to go to the places that those customers are, or you might be relying on your salespeople to do the, I think, cold outreach and that kind of thing and sort of build relationships that way. But I'm kind of curious on that salesperson, because again, the people that might be thinking is like, do I have the team to deliver on this? Is that salesperson like, do you need particularly when you're in that, let's say it's not totally starting from scratch, and let's say it's not also massive business, is that salesperson like just good at kind of hunting and kind of building it, or is that person more like a relationship builder, or even potentially an educator that maybe can kind of speak these things?
I asked myself this specific question so many times when recruiting salespeople, and the answer I gave myself is crazy simple. So I believe that one great salesperson does two things. The first one is passionate and studied very well the product he or she is selling. So they really master the thing. They know everything about they're studying about the industry. They know where they stand. They know why the solution they're providing is better than the others, and they also know what others are able to do and provide better. So this is the number one thing. They must be learners of the industry and the service. And the other thing is that they must be always reliable and always punctual. So a bad salesperson will always say yes, and will always say will always provide an answer even if they're not sure about that thing. It's better to say, look, I'll get back to you, and in a few hours you know that you get that email with the answer that is pretty well outlined, and they might say no, or they might say no and provide you with a different solution, but there's no bullshit involved. That's the most important thing, because when you look at a movie, the sales guy is always the one that stands up and is always the one the loudest, and that's not what I think it's making a good salesperson. It's just two things. They know what they're talking about, and they that you can rely as a client. You can always rely on that person. Everything else is secondary. So everything else is can be helpful, of course, but it doesn't make a huge difference.
Great words of advice.
I think that was like singularly the best, like one of the things that I've really learned from you. Thank you so much, Giacomo. I'm going to ask one question, unless you kind of have something else that you'd like to talk on, but is kind of your view on where things are going as well in the language space, like particularly since you've seen B2C and B2B. I think you mentioned consolidation, but maybe you have some other thoughts around where it's going.
Consolidation will happen, I believe, at some point. It's happening already. Look at Buzoo. Wow, that was massive, and well done to them. But at some point, this will happen, and this will be in the client's interest for sure. Something that I see is that nowadays we are always asked to provide live content. So the teacher, the person must be involved, but at the same time, the content is key. What we are recording today, I think, not our single episode, but the podcasts became and are becoming the best source of information out there. So it's crazy. When driving to the office today, I was listening to an interview done by Tim Ferriss to Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, that is amazing. It's a long form interview where you can really explore things in details. It's just amazing. It's the best content out there. It's hard, not because it's hard to reach Mark Zuckerberg, but it's hard. Each of us don't have much time in order to do that. And also it's difficult to select the correct content. So I'm expecting the next learning company to fix that problem, to select the best content out there, to somehow provide it in a short form version, and then being able to expand on that when necessary, but at the same time not becoming the next Duolingo, the next Bubble, because that's been done already. There must be a live component. There must be a person. There must be something that is per definition custom. So people are looking for tailor-made solutions around their needs, but the content must be there. It's the best moment and the hardest moment to create content, but people that will master that will have a lot of success.
Awesome. Giacomo, I think we can finish there. I'm going to quickly just mention kind of what we've been through today. We've talked about your journey from B2C to B2B. We talked about your decision-making process and how you looked at your own customers, and then you were able to see, a thread there that you really pulled at, and then really went wholeheartedly into the B2B process. We talked about how there are some really significant differences between those and knowing what you're selling. Particularly, you talked about kind of reporting processes. I really liked how you talked about that balancing act between marketing and selling. And you had a fantastic point on the kind of sales ingredients you need to be successful. And then finally, some great words of advice at the end there around where we're going. And it's a very exciting space to be in still. So thank you so much for that, Giacomo.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Now, Giacomo, I did want to kind of finish as well. I mean, Fluentify is a great service that people should know about. And also there might be people listening here that could be very interested in working with Fluentify. Where would they go for that?
So we always look for great teachers. We do have a page in order to become Fluentify tutors. It's on our website, fluentify.com. I mean, Fluentify grows when the teacher base is growing. So we always look for great teachers with strong backgrounds. And you can find everything on our website. Just hit the Become a Teacher button, and you'll find all the different.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Giacomo. And Herbert, where can people find you?
Yes, they can find out more about our digital ads agency at herbertgerzer.com.
And from me, you can learn more about LearnCube's virtual classroom and online school solution, which does really cater for a lot of great corporate language businesses at www.learncube.com. But in the meantime, look after yourselves, have a great time teaching, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for the Get More Students podcast, and we'll see you here again next time. Thanks again. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.